Hi, this is John Gabriel, and welcome to the show. And I'm very pleased today to be joined by Dr. Ruben Nyman. Dr. Nyman has studied at the University of Arizona, where he received a BA in anthropology and completed his MS in rehabilitation counseling. Dr. Nyman earned a PhD in clinical psychology at Alliant University in San Diego. And for the past 20 years, Dr. Nyman has dedicated his focus on sleep and dream health services. He has maintained a private psychology practice for more than 25 years and has worked as a consultant to businesses and organizations. He's currently the director of the Circadian Health Associates, which is an organization that provides goods and services and information in support of sleep and health. Dr. Nyman is the sleep and dream specialist at the world-renowned University of Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine, directed by Dr. Andrew Weil. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Nyman not only about the importance of sleep and deep sleep for weight loss, but also emotional health and many other areas of life. So as you're listening, to learn more about Dr. Nyman, his books and his work, please visit www.drnyman.com. That's drnaiman.com. Dr. Nyman, how are you?
I'm good. Very happy to be here with you, John.
Thanks very much for coming. You know, I personally, when I weighed over 400 pounds at one time, and I had a very, very severe case of sleep apnea, as many people do when they're overweight. And I didn't know anything about it at the time, but I now realize that if I had not gotten my sleep apnea taken care of through getting a CPAP machine, there's no way I could have ever lost the weight. I had to do many other things, but getting my sleep apnea taken care of was of paramount importance. I don't have sleep apnea anymore, but when I did, I had one of the worst cases of sleep apnea that the sleep studies, when I did my test, said that they'd ever seen. I think it's 178 full apneas within a 2-hour period, and my blood oxygen levels were in the 50s when they should be in the 90s. Wow. So I'm a big proponent, as people know, when they know my approach, I'm a real big proponent in the importance of getting sleep apnea taken care of. It causes several things. It elevates your cortisol levels, which I discovered that elevated cortisol levels actually activate our fat programs, because when you're in a famine, your body elevates its cortisol levels, and it triggers your body to start gaining weight. So having chronically elevated cortisol levels is a trigger to your body to gain weight. So it's a vicious cycle, and it's impossible to pull out of it unless you get the sleep apnea taken care of. So, so sleep is really important, and I know you have a lot of different ways, techniques for improving sleep. So I'm wondering if we could just start by talking a little bit about how you see the importance of sleep and what people can do to help improve their sleep.
Well, sleep is one of the 4 critical cornerstones of health. When we talk about this in our program, we mention nutrition, exercise, and of course stress management. And sleep, I think, is the one that gets the least amount of attention. But when you step back and look at this puzzle, you realize it's really difficult to obtain good nutrition, healthy exercise, or to manage one's stress, one's emotions, unless we're well slept. Sleep, I think, it really underpins the other 3. And it's probably the one that receives the least amount of attention. And as you were suggesting earlier, it is unquestionably a critical factor in body weight. If you look at the obesity epidemic, the data on that in this country, and you look at the sleep epidemic, they're parallel. It looks as if the 2 are directly linked.
That doesn't surprise me at all, because even if you don't have sleep problems before you gain weight, once you gain a certain amount of weight, you will have sleep problems, because what happens is the weight of your neck overcomes the pressure in your windpipe, and then you develop this condition of sleep apnea, which is what happened to me, and then I wasn't sleeping. And I can tell you that my life was a living nightmare, and it's exactly what you're saying. If you look, and my approach to weight loss and overall well-being is very similar, where we look at those 4 areas of nutrition and stress management and overall digestion and exercise, and then sleep. And it's true, people don't pay attention to sleep. And I usually can tell, like when I'm talking to someone, I usually can tell when they have sleep apnea because their breathing is very labored. I don't know if you've experienced that. Right. And I remember I was And so I was talking to this guy in Melbourne one day. He just called out of the blue, and he's got this. I used to have this labored, he was just really heavy kind of breathing. And he's telling me how much he eats and his calories and and exercise. And I said, I don't want to talk anything about your calories or what your good days or your bad days. I said, I can tell from your breathing that you've got sleep apnea. You've got to get that taken care of first, and then I'll be more than happy to talk with you. So he got his sleep apnea taken care of, and he went on to lose over 80 pounds in about 4 months, doing absolutely nothing else but getting his sleep apnea taken care of. And I learned from that it's actually a waste of time, in my opinion, to deal with all of the other issues until you've got the sleep in place. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that dealing with that people don't pay attention to sleep. They sort of poo-poo it. Oh yeah, I'll get it. No big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, something you said earlier too, I think is really important. So many people, particularly men, but also women, are reluctant to get evaluated for sleep apnea. Yeah. They've seen the image of a CPAP, the Darth Vader mask, and they're scared to death of it. Yeah. And one of the reasons for that is too many sleep doctors sort of pronounce this as a lifelong treatment. They will directly or indirectly say, you know what, you're going to need this thing for the rest of your life. And you and I think many other people like yourself are living testaments to the fact that if you take this as a first step in the direction of health, a lot of people can use it as a bridge to get to a point where they don't need it anymore.
And to me, it's so brilliant.
And I think that would encourage people.
Well, I'm sorry? That would encourage people.
I think that would encourage more people to get tested, and more people do. There's less than 10% of people with apnea have been tested,
which is a crime, really, because if they have no idea how it's hurting their health. And to me, it's such a brilliant solution because it's not a medication, it's not toxic, it doesn't tax your liver, imbalance your hormone system. It's air just being pumped into your body, and it changes your life. And I think you're right. People just don't. And then they say things like, "Well, the mask is uncomfortable," and this and that. And and so I didn't do it. And what I usually tell people is, you got to follow through. You got to get a mask that fits you properly. You got to get the pressure right, and you got to keep working at it. And it's once you solve the problem, it's over. After I lost my weight, I didn't have sleep apnea anymore, and I sent the machine back to Fisher and Paykel with a big thank you note. But on the Darth Vader mask thing, one thing that was funny was that it has back then at least they had a real loud noise. My pressure was all the way as high as it could get, and in the beginning we couldn't sleep the first couple of days, me and my wife. But then afterwards, when I was done with the machine, we actually had to play it at night to fall asleep because we had become so used to the noise. So we had to sort of weed ourselves off of it.
People grow to love it. Yeah. The other thing too, John, is that there are also some alternatives, and it really depends on a person's individual presentation and their anatomy and so on. But some people can get by without a CPAP and use what's called a mandibular advancement device, which is a dental device. And it's really interesting. In the last few years, there's been some research, and there's more ongoing research about using the didgeridoo to treat primary snoring and mild levels of apnea. It's fascinating, and some people can actually play the didge for 20 minutes a day and cure their apnea. So
you know what? Do they know why that is? Because immediately I had a thought of what that could be doing. It could be strengthening the muscles around the windpipe so that they stay open.
Exactly. They're toning the muscles in the upper ear. Now, this doesn't work for everybody, but it appears to be working for some people.
How does the dental mandibular apparatus work?
Again, depending on a person's anatomical structure, their upper airway structure, what it does is it gently pulls the lower jaw forward, which creates more opening for the upper airway.
I see. But it doesn't. It wouldn't address if your windpipe is being cut off from your chest or your neck. It probably wouldn't address that.
Again, it depends on anatomy, and it depends on if there's an obesity issue around it, and a number of other things.
Right.
But it does work for some people.
Now, what about other sleeping issues besides sleep apnea? Like, what kind of issues do people face, and what can you do about it?
Well, so the most common sleep disorder, of course, is insomnia. Which basically refers to trouble falling asleep and/or trouble staying asleep, and it also includes people who are getting poor quality sleep. Yeah. They're sleeping, but it's very light. And in the U.S., at least, the government estimates, and I think it's a low estimate, that there are 60 million American adults with chronic insomnia. Yeah. So it's a huge medical issue. In fact, from a simple number standpoint, it's the number one health concern excuse me, in the Western world. But, before I comment on sleep solutions, I think, and I think this is a parallel to your work as well, I hear myself saying often that we don't get sleep because we don't get sleep. There are lots of presumptions about what sleep is, and it's similar to a healthy body weight. People just assume that you get a healthy weight by dieting, and it's so clear that that's not the case. People have a negative definition of sleep, meaning they don't define exactly what it is, they define what it's not. Yeah. So people in our world believe that sleep is simply the absence of waking. And it seems like a simple notion, but it's like saying health is the absence of disease. Yeah. And we know that that's not true. It's not true. So one of the things we have to consider is what is sleep? And when we take a close look at that, and this actually takes us from the realm of science into the realm of spirituality and the realm of consciousness, and kind of an artistic realm. And there is scientific evidence backing this up, but all of us are all already always asleep. In other words, sleep is a state of consciousness that's the default. It sits behind waking. Mm-hmm. It's not another place. It's not some place. It's not like you leave the room of waking and enter a new room of sleep. To understand this, I think, helps people get that they don't have to work nearly as hard to get to sleep. And one of the huge problems with insomnia is we take our waking ways of being, and our waking ways of being include a lot of imposition of control over life. We just want to control this, control that. That's fine during waking life, but when we carry that, when we smuggle that into our bedroom and we try to make sleep happen, all of our effort absolutely backfires because sleep is already there. What we have to do is learn to let go of waking. So having said that, sleep is just as complex as waking, and there really is no simple fix. And if we want to return to healthy sleep, we need to look in three arenas. We need to look at our biology, we need to look at our psychology, and we need to look at our sleep environment. And in short, I refer to biology as our body, our psychology as mind, and the environment, or the sleep environment, I refer to as the bed, although it would include the bed and bedroom and so on. So we need to look at factors that are body, mind, and bed related that can negatively impact our sleep. And one obvious example at a body level is lots of people take medication, lots of people eat high glycemic foods, lots of people consume vast amounts of caffeine, and all of this fires the body up. Yeah. From a mind standpoint, by the way, we're all aware today, I think more than ever, that we're a culture that simultaneously overeats but is undernourished. We absolutely overconsume. Yeah. The same is true not just for food, but it's also true for light and for information. Yeah, that makes sense. And this is something most people aren't aware of. We consume excessive amounts of light, particularly at night. We're probably a third more light than our ancestors did just 100 years ago. And light, like food, is a source of energy. We can also make an argument that we overconsume information. I read one blogger who recently said in an average month of life today, we consume as much information as people did in a lifetime 100 years ago. I'm sure that's true. If you step back and you look at the overconsumption of food, particularly highly processed, high glycemic foods and stimulants, the overconsumption of light, which actually energizes us, and that's great during the day but not good at night, the overconsumption of information, it's a huge issue with regard to sleep because sleep is a low-energy state. And if we overconsume excessive energy during the day, we don't have the wherewithal to dispense with enough of it before we get to sleep. So falling asleep, whatever else it involves releasing energy. We know that in nature, our bodies and our brains have to cool. In fact, core body temperature, when the sun goes down, starts to drop very gradually. It parallels the temperature in the environment. In fact, we can actually literally say sleep is very cool. Yeah. And to cool, we need to give off all of this energy, and it's hard to release sufficient energy if we're taking on too much during the day.
Well, there's a theme that you keep coming up with which is release and letting go. And I think also part of the information age that we're in is that we have this sort of this belief that most of us don't even question, that the more information we have, the more we take in, the safer we're going to be. Like if we know everything and we get all the stats on what's happening on the market and what's happening next door and what's happening on the other side of the world, that somehow by knowing everything, we're going to be able to be safe. And the assumption that we don't even the belief that we don't even question is this belief that somehow we're able to protect ourselves by knowing all the facts. When in reality, there's a whole nother part of our existence that's involved in creating us, maintaining us, protecting us, and that part of us is there helping to nourish us when we sleep. And we don't want to surrender control to that because we think somehow our safety is at risk. So I see people at the end of the day, they're just so wound up from getting all the information, getting all the stimulants, and working real hard to make ends meet and all this. They're so wound up. The last thing they want to do is surrender control, and it's the very most essential thing you need to do, I believe, not only in sleep, but in many times in life too. I know that the most important changes that happened in my life happened at a time of surrender, when I just couldn't figure out everything, when I didn't know what the answers were, and I just had to let go. And that letting go took me to a better place. And I believe that sleep is like that. The more comfortable you are with trusting and letting go, that other part of you that does create and nurture and preserve you, trusting that and letting go and surrendering to it will allow you to go into that deep sleep and to be nourished. I'm just getting that from kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's the big picture, and that letting go, I believe, has to happen in three arenas. We have to let go at a body level, we have to let go at a mind or a psychological level, and we need our sleep environment to let us go. Yeah. So at a body level, one of the things I work with a lot of people on, I teach about, is our relationship to gravity. And this is something, and gravity is the single most potent, ubiquitous force on the planet, in fact, in the universe, but it's the one we pay least attention to. And one of the ways of helping ourselves get to sleep is to let your body basically surrender to gravity. Yeah. We do this when we go from the vertical, the sitting or standing up, to the horizontal, and just letting it go. Now, this is easier said than done if the body is pumped up with lots of stimulants. If it's been ricocheting, spiking up and down with high glycemic foods all day, it's really hard for the body to rest.
Yeah.
So I think part of what's inherent in your approach and in my approach to sleep, and I think in every sensible approach to health, is trusting yourself, trusting a deeper part of yourself. Exactly. The body and the mind already know how to sleep. You would probably say they really know how to maintain a healthy weight. Yeah. It's about trusting that. I think at a psychological level, surrender is in our world is very tricky, because we're so hell-bent on controlling everything, and trying to control sleep is it's the greatest paradox. The harder people try to get to sleep, the more difficult it becomes.
And if you think about it, what do we really control? I mean, you can't control your breathing. You could hold your breath for a minute at the most, minute and a half. It's not something you can control, and you can't regulate it either. That's the domain of your body. Your body keeps you alive. Your body knows how to keep you alive. It knows how to nourish itself when you give it healthy foods. It knows how to stay healthy when you give it all the things that it needs. What in that do we even control? And when I really look at the issue of control, I think about things that we really have no idea how things happen. Like just simple things like taking a thought that you want to move your finger and just moving your finger. Just that act, an invisible thought becomes a physical movement. How much of that do we control? I mean, we have no idea how that even happens. No one can tell me how a simple act like moving your finger even happens. So there's so much of life that we have no control over. And what I've learned more and more is just to surrender to that part of us that is.
You're making a lot of people uncomfortable by saying this.
Well,
but I really think we have to pass through that. You were referring to confusion before. Yeah. And part of the bridge that takes us to sleep, we literally lose our mind. We lose the waking mind. We have to be willing to let go of the waking mind. Yeah. And it takes us. It's interesting. The passage from waking to sleep takes us through a brief portal of dreaming.
Yeah.
And this is a really deep concern of mine. I came into the field of sleep medicine through a side door. I was trained as a dream analyst from a Jungian perspective, and I still love that work. And it mixes with sort of the largely biomedical bent of sleep science today, like oil and water. But I'm one of the few sleep doctors in the country today that believes that dreams are meaningful and dreaming is an essential part of this. So part of letting go takes us into the dream. When we let go. In fact, even when we're awake, if we stop directing the mind, it will get a bit expansive. It'll start to become artistic and poetic. And of course, we go into what some people would call a daydream, or I would call a waking dream. But dreaming is what happens when we stop holding on real tightly to waking consciousness. And there's growing evidence that it's a critical part of sleep. And talking about apnea before, one of the characteristics of severe apnea is there's a total loss of dreaming.
That's right.
And I believe that there's really strong data showing something that we believed many years ago was metaphoric, but now I think it's literal, and that's that the loss of dreaming. I think the loss of dreaming is the single most critical overlooked factor in clinical depression today. When you look at sleep patterns in depressed people, they look like sleep patterns in both animal and human studies where there's been a selective deprivation of REM sleep or dreaming. So I think dreaming is a really critical part of this, and letting go, because when we let go of the dream, we're not controlling our lives along some rational track. There's something bigger, something broader that comes in. And the scientific data we have now is that dreaming is really critical in processing emotion. People who don't dream, it's as if it's kind of a psychological or a psychospiritual form of digesting the information that we've consumed that day. At night, it gets assimilated and becomes part of who we are through the dreaming process. And of course, the trick to good dreaming is good sleep.
Yeah, well, I remember the very first, when I was at the clinic getting my sleep study, and they put the CPAP machine on me, and I got 2 or 3 hours of deep sleep for the first time in years, and I had a dream. And I woke up and I went, oh my God, dreams. I haven't had a dream. I don't remember the last time I had a dream. And I felt clear and calm and relaxed for the first time. And there's no way to just, I can't even express in words that how essential that nutrient is that deep sleep. And
vitamin S.
And a lot of people say that my unique quality is being able to put people to sleep because I made this evening visualization CD that people listen to as they're going to sleep, and it has a frequency following response behind it that steps them first from the beta into the alpha, into the theta, and into the delta states of consciousness, which are the deep sleep states. And so as they're listening, they automatically fall asleep because the music's designed to do that. Do you work with things like that, with different ways of getting into the dream states?
I do actually. I have a very similar audiobook. It's a 2-part audiobook. One of them, I have a number of these. One of them is called To Sleep Tonight, and it does exactly what you described. Actually, the first part of the book, the first CD, is a crash course in sleep, and then the second CD includes 2 visualizations, which it's also got a music track, which my son is a musician, and he did that. And we stepped down from beta to alpha to theta and delta, delta parallels in music. Interesting. I find that, and sometimes people say to me, I'll get emails that people say to me that, I didn't even realize it, but the biggest benefit I'm getting is I'm finally getting a deep sleep, and I'm just so grateful. Right. Yeah. So, we were talking earlier about the correlates of poor sleep, and one of the things that happens if we don't sleep is our immune system is compromised. During the day, the body and mind directs its energy into dealing with daily life. That there's an interchange with life, and at night, that energy is diverted into kind of maintenance, cleaning up, but it also galvanizes the immune system. And we know that short sleepers, people who sleep, say, less than 5 or 6 hours a night routinely, have a 50% increased risk for viral infection. It's because of compromised immunity. We also see a dramatic increase risk in autoimmune diseases like arthritis associated with poor sleep.
Yeah.
We see increased risk for neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's and all kinds of things like that. We also see a dramatically increased risk in metabolic disorders.
Yeah.
We see more diabetes with
Sure.
this. It's not a surprise. People who lose just a few hours of sleep one night will have spikes in insulin resistance the next day.
Yeah.
But even losing a smaller amount of sleep creates a sort of a chronic low-grade spiking of insulin resistance the next day.
Yeah.
One of the things that surprises people too is there's the American Cancer Society did a study of 1 million American adults and found that there was a significant increased risk for cancer correlated. We don't have a cause and effect thing, but correlated with being a short sleeper.
Wow.
And something I hinted at a moment ago, we know that sleep deprivation, a year of off-and-on insomnia is the single strongest predictive factor for future clinical depression.
Wow.
So you put all this together,
Wow,
and what too many people deem as a waste of time is something that's so critical to health.
Wow.
The other piece I mentioned earlier, and something I think is rarely addressed, and it's that sleep is more than just functional. What's happened in the world today, so many people are becoming their consciousness is more expanded around nutrition. Compared to 20, 30 years ago, so many people now know about omega-3 fatty acids. They need to get their vitamin D and get enough fiber. And I think this is great news. But I find a lot of people are now eating functionally. So it's like, oh, my God, I better have some salmon tonight because I haven't had omega-3 fatty acids this week. And I think it's important to know that. But what happens is the joy of eating becomes secondary. It's something I call infidelity, where people are no longer invested in the joy. There's a very similar pattern with sleep. A lot of people are now looking at sleep as functional, so they hear all of these facts about how critical good sleep is, and it becomes this mechanistic thing. And for me, the most important thing I believe I can tell people about sleep is that it's incredibly joyous.
Yeah.
On occasion, you'll hear somebody whisper, because people are afraid to say this out loud, but you hear them whisper things like, I really love sleep. And
it's almost like we're afraid to admit it, in a sense. They
are afraid to admit it, but when people become good sleepers, and I can say that, I think I love being awake. I love daily life. I love morning. I love creativity. I love people and so on. But just as much I love sleep. So it's not a booby prize. It's not something I have to do just so that I'll be healthy and have energy or good memory.
Yeah.
It's something when I go to bed at night, it's like, wow, this is another great thing I get to do.
Yeah.
And I think we need to fall back in love with sleep. We need to recognize it for what it is. And what it is number one, it's an artistic state of consciousness. When we sleep, we dream. And when we dream, we are all artists. We're performing artists in our dreams, and it takes us into a world that's so much bigger, so much broader, so much more mystical. And then sleep itself, most people think of sleep as being nothing, but my read of the data is sleep is the lazy person's route to enlightenment. I think when we go to deep sleep, we go to places where people practice meditation for 30 years to get to.
Let me ask you about that. I need to ask you about that, because I do a lot of meditation. That's sort of my love. That's my personal passion, and I've been doing it for years. And what I'm finding is that there are times when I might wake up at maybe 4 or 5 in the morning and then meditate for a couple hours. And if I do that, I might be missing out. Obviously, I'm missing out on those 3 hours of sleep. But I'm not missing those 3 hours. I'm feeling like I've gotten something really regenerative and powerful, and I find that the rest of the day is just enormously beneficial. So I'm wondering, have you had any kind of research on the difference between sleep and meditating, and is meditation giving you that same kind of benefit at all?
Yeah, it's a great question, John, and as a common indicates, there isn't a simple answer, but I can say something. I think it depends on the kind of meditation, and there's really good data now on people who are experts in meditation, and these are folks who've meditated for 10,000 hours plus, and they appear. Now, I've met and spoken at length with one of these guys, and what he can do is he can sit down and go into his meditative process, and within a few short minutes, he can open his eyes and with his eyes open, while he's wide awake, he's in delta sleep.
That's amazing.
So, we're
taking
EEG sensors on his head.
That's
so
amazing.
He's learned the waking coordinates of that. And, the belief that sleeping and waking are opposite conditions is not true.
That's amazing. I just have to tell people, just so they understand what you just said, that delta sleep, just for people, delta sleep is the deepest possible sleep you could ever be in. It's beyond dreaming. It's the sleep where your brain waves are barely functioning at all. They're going at 4 cycles per second when waking state is somewhere around 30. So it's just absolute knocked out dead. And so to be able to open your eyes and be conscious in the most unconscious space is, previously I didn't think that was possible. So that's really amazing.
Well, it's clearly rare. It's rare, but I think again, sleep. We look at sleep as being the opposite of waking, but it's not. Sleep takes us to a place that's so profoundly serene.
Yeah.
Most of us have not the slightest waking world language or conceptualization. We see it when we go there. We experience it, but we can't bring it back because there's no bridge to the waking world.
Right.
So meditators forge that bridge.
Well, I've been doing
it.
I've been doing it for a very long time now, and I talk about this what I call smart mode, which is the alpha and the theta state. And what I find is that I can sometimes be in that alpha state and still be waking and just maybe just sitting but being fully conscious. And I find that I call it in my work I call it what I call a smart mode, and I find that you're amazingly creative in that state. And that's when I'm in that state where I'm awake and I'm sitting, but I'm in a kind of like the rhythm of my brainwaves is similar to a dream state. That's when my most creative inspiration comes. So it's like a powerful resource, and what I'm hearing from you is being able to marry those two states, that creative artistic state that we have when we're sleeping, and to marry it with consciousness is a very powerful asset that I think we all have to help create our lives.
It takes some practice.
Yeah.
There's the newer data on consciousness EEG is interesting because they're really high frequency waking states. We typically think of beta, which runs 12 cycles per second and up, or 12, 14 and up, and go up to 30 or 40. But there's a state above that. There's a higher frequency brainwave activity called gamma, and it appears that some people can actually engage full consciousness. They can be in all those states simultaneously. Wow. It's a state of coherence.
Wow.
And it's being as awake as anyone could possibly. The heights of waking and simultaneously the depths of sleep. So you have this profound relaxation, this incredible focus. I wish it was something I could do. I have a sense for it, but I think it takes a tremendous amount of practice. So I think meditation is the way to get there.
I do too, and meditation gives me so many different things, but I sort of look at the body as just this. I think it was P.D. Ouspensky that once said that our mind-body unit is sort of like a spaceship that we carry around, that we tug around like a horse and buggy, like we tie a rope to it and have a horse pull it. In other words, we have this ability to do incredible things, to be the most profoundly creative and energetic person, and have tremendous inspiration. And we don't know how to access it. So it's like we're carrying the spaceship. Eventually, he says, as we learn more about ourselves, we learn how to turn the engine on and to drive it and to fly it and eventually do inner space travel. And you just hear these stories of people that have been meditating for years that seem like incredible things that they can do, but they can do it regularly and you can test it and it's predictable. Yeah. And the level of productivity and creativity that they're able to achieve is unparalleled. And I think we all have that inside us.
And even in addition to that, there's something that is not nearly as visible, and it's the degree of inner peace and joy, and compassion that can come with that. It just opens our hearts wide.
It's true. It's what
so I'm wondering if we can. I was just wondering if I can get back and offer some simple tips, because we're talking about really the glory of sleep.
Yeah, it's
but,
easy to get
we all know there's lots and lots of people who are going to drag themselves in the bedroom tonight and struggle again. So I don't want to make it sound like there's a simple fix, but there is a fix, and it's really worth making a commitment to developing a more loving relationship with sleep. And to do that, I think people need to look in their own lives, and they need to look at what I call noise. Because sleep is already there, what we need to do is identify and eliminate the noise that blocks it. And so, again, noise can occur at a body, a mind, or a bed level. And I gave some examples of body noise, poor nutrition, lack of exercise that cause body noise, excessive caffeine, and so on. Mind noise is the most obvious one. And there's a really interesting condition that we've now sort of conceptualized in sleep medicine. It's called hyperarousal. Yeah. And hyperarousal is both a biological and a psychological condition. It involves increased and dysrhythmic levels of cortisol you were talking about earlier, decreased levels of melatonin, increased heart rate, increased metabolic rate around the 24-hour circadian cycle. It involves what we call an overactivation of the HPA, the hypothalamic pituitary axis, and so on. And so these folks, when you look closely at them, it turns out that the problem with their sleep is not that they're insufficiently sleepy. And by the way, if you ask someone who doesn't sleep well why they can't sleep at night, they'll typically say, I just don't feel sleepy enough. But when you look at it through this other lens, it turns out that they're plenty sleepy. They're too wakeful. The problem is not insufficient sleepiness, it's excessive wakefulness. Right. So a lot of people with insomnia identify with airplanes or sports cars. I did some work with the Tour de France a while ago, and it's really interesting. If you ask a bicyclist or you ask a race car driver, for example, what's the most important part of your machine? Naively, I thought they would say, well, it's the engine, but they'll actually tell you it's the brakes. The more confident they are in their ability to slow, the faster they can go. And so people who are moving fast during waking life, they just need a better braking system. If you're a high-flying Learjet, that's cool, but you know what? You need a longer landing strip. A lot of people try to stop on a dime. They keep going and going and going until, the second they turn off the last lamp on the bedstand, and they wonder why they can't get to sleep. It's like driving your car 60 miles an hour into your garage before you hit the brakes. Right. You're going to hit that back wall. So people need to dial down their noise. They need to identify, the biological, the psychological sources of noise, and they need to apply the brakes long before the car's in the garage.
Okay, that makes sense.
The other piece I think is really important to mention is a lot of people do all the right things. They work on letting go psychologically. They have practices to do that. They're living a healthy lifestyle, and for some reason they still can't fall asleep. If you think about the descent into sleep as a beautiful descent into, I often in my writing talk about the sea of sleep, the waters of sleep. Too many people don't know it, but they've got a bungee cord tied around their ankle, and it's tethering them to waking life. And what I mean by this is there's so many factors in the sleep environment that can actually keep you from freely descending. The most critical one, the most overlooked one, is the excessive exposure to light at night. Light is about daytime, and when during the day when the sun rises, sunlight naturally increases serotonin. It invites us into passion and wakefulness. But light at night will do the same thing. Light will communicate to the brain that it's still daytime. In fact, even small amounts of light will suppress melatonin. Right. And melatonin is really the key. It's sort of the queen hormone of our nighttime biology. Right. So it's a really good idea to dim the lights. And this is a tough one because the light that comes out of computer screens and TV screens is especially suppressive of melatonin. It has a strong element of the blue wavelength, which kind of mimics daylight. There are now some technology devices available that can be helpful. And the simplest one is you can get a pair of blue blocker glasses.
Okay.
And these are they look like sunglasses, but they're amber orange in color, and they filter out the blue light, so it lets you be awake in the evening and do things. You can read or watch TV, and your brain will still get the message that it's nighttime. Okay. So wearing these for a couple of hours before bed is helpful.
So what you're saying is it won't inhibit the secretion of melatonin. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
That's amazing.
Exactly.
I just want to make a point about that. That's really important. I'm really interested in that and learning more about it, because the precursor to melatonin, that is the hormone that's produced that tells the body to produce melatonin, also tells the body to turn off what I call the fat programs. It actually increases your sensitivity to leptin. So anything you can do to increase the stimulation of that hormone then is going to help you lose weight. So these glasses that you're talking about, I would venture to say, are not only going to help you go to sleep, but for a whole nother reason are also going to help you lose weight too. So are these glasses, where does somebody get glasses like this?
There's a great website, and in fact it's loaded with good information. It's called Low Blue Lights. That's one word, lowbluelights.com. Okay. And they sell the glasses. There's similar glasses that are made for sharpshooting, but they don't quite have the same kinds of lens in them, although it's something people could get by with. Yeah, not only that, John, but, keeping a healthy melatonin rhythm is a key factor in a healthy circadian rhythm. Okay. And you were talking about, displaced cortisol before. I mean, our whole system gets out of whack if we don't give in tonight, So the two things we need to really establish healthy rhythms are exposure to dim light and darkness at night, and exposure to healthy morning light. The odd thing is we're overexposed to light at night, and we're exposed to really unhealthy, limited levels of light during the day. Yeah. So getting good light in the morning is a good thing to do, and getting exposure to darkness. And the other thing I'll say about the bedroom is there's evidence that suggests that the bedroom is the single most polluted room in the house. Wow. And there are lots of reasons for that. One is, we carry our cleaners from the dry cleaning home in plastic bags. Yeah. We've got cleaning products under the sink. There are all kinds of cosmetics which are not necessarily natural. But the big one is that most of what we sleep around is cotton. And conventional, ordinary cotton is the single most pesticide-laden crop in the world. It takes an ungodly amount of pesticide to make just enough cotton for a T-shirt. So you get into bed, your mattress it contains lots of cotton, your sheets, your bedding, your pillow, your pajamas. And so we're wrapped in this stuff for 8 hours or more a night. I don't mean to be alarmist, because I believe in the inherent resilience of the body. But what I recommend to people is the next time, when it's time to get new sheets, get organic sheets. When it's time comes around to get a new mattress, you can get a really good, natural, organic, good quality mattress for the same price you would pay for an ordinary mattress. Yeah. So start, going green in the bedroom. And then the last piece of this, and also very important, is make sure that you're breathing clean air at night. And there are a couple of ways to do this. One is to get a HEPA filter. The simpler way to do it is get some houseplants. Most ordinary houseplants will clean the air pretty dramatically at night. Yeah. I have 3, they're called mother-in-law tongue plants, these sort of spiky leaf plants behind my bed. And it really makes a difference. It makes a difference with allergies, and it just makes a difference in terms of purifying the oxygen you breathe.
Mm-hmm. I find also, when I can't get to sleep because my mind's going, if I just do a simple stretch, like there's a stretch in yoga that they call the child's pose, where basically you're on your hands and knees, like the way a Muslim prays. You're on your hands and knees, you touch and you bow and touch your forehead to the ground or to the mattress. It stretches your spine. And I find that after just doing that simple stretch, my mind somehow is a little bit calmer. And it's usually I just have to trick it just a little bit to get my mind to calm down just a little bit, and then I can drift off. Do you recommend things like that for people?
Yeah, I have the last audiobook I did is called The Yoga of Sleep. Yeah. And it focuses a whole lot on the psychological aspects. But what happens in the child's pose is very beautiful, because for at least a few seconds or a moment, you're totally yielding to gravity. Yeah. There's a bodily surrender, and I think that's real helpful too. That's a great idea.
Okay, well that's awesome. So, listen, before we wrap it up, if people want to find out more about your ebooks and the other services that you have, what's the best way to contact you to your website?
The best way is through the website at drnyman.com. Actually, if you Google the word sleep and my first name, Rubin, Rubin, you'll get pages of stuff on me, and I'm easy to find.
Okay, so sleep.
I do lecture around the country and sometimes around the world. Yeah, actually, you're based in Australia?
I am, yeah, Western Australia.
Oh, you are, yeah. Western Australia. I love it down there. I went down to do some sleep work a couple of years ago, and it's a beautiful country.
It's gorgeous. Where we are is just absolutely fabulous. But yeah, so but I hope. Listen, I just want to say to everyone, thanks very much for listening. But I hope you can see how tremendously important sleep is for and how interrelated everything is: weight loss, emotional health, just vitality, and then to get rid of chronic conditions such as arthritis, inflammation, cancer, type 2 diabetes. It's all interrelated.
Right.
Sleep is as integral a part of the puzzle as anything, and I really hope that everybody's been able to see that through our talk today with Dr. Nyman. So, Dr. Nyman, I just want to say thanks very much for joining us. And
thank you. It's a pleasure to meet a kindred spirit.
Thanks. I appreciate that very much. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot in the future. So thank you.
Dan.
And thanks everyone else for joining us.
My pleasure. Okay. Bye-bye.